So, we've got a number 1 deluxe meal. Is there anything else I can get you?
Yeah, I'd also like a good night's sleep. Maybe something like the I didn't struggle all night with my uncomfortable CPAP mask.
Sir, I think what you're looking for is Inspire. It's an implant that works inside your body to treat sleep apnea without a CPAP.
Come on!
He sounds hangry. Inspire, sleep apnea innovation. Inspire is not for everyone. Talk to your doctor to see if it's right for you and review important safety information at inspiresleep.com.
And good evening. This is Frank Mottek. We're doing it live right here, Mottek on Money in the 5 o'clock hour here on 790 KABC. We get right down to business here with the news-driven hour in the heart of drive time. Mottek on Money 5 nights a week for you, live on the air here on 790 KABC, online streaming live at KABC.com, and the on-demand Mottek on Money podcast, KABC.com, Apple, iTunes, all of your favorite podcast platforms. And yes, of course, we're on the socials too at Frank Mottek on X, formerly known as Twitter and Instagram, and getting on Threads too. Well, lower finish for the stock market today in another seesaw session with the Dow moving up after the opening bell after a 13-session winning streak, the longest such string of gains seen since January of the epic year 1987. It was a cliffhanger today on whether the Dow would make it 14 winners in a row, which would be the longest stretch of wins since 1897, but that was not to happen today with the Dow's big summertime rally coming to an end as money came off the table late in the trading day. Sparking the sell-off, reports that the Bank of Japan was about to change its financial policies. Goldman Sachs Group and Home Depot were the second and third biggest contributors to the winning streak through today, chipping in, nearly 300 points for Goldman Sachs and nearly 200 for Home Depot. Apple and Microsoft, the only two members of the so-called Magnificent Seven group of the tech names included in the Dow, had surprisingly little influence on the streak, according to MarketWatch. The housing recession is over, according to the chief economist at the National Association of Realtors. Pending home sales ticked up for the first time in 4 months, according to Lawrence Yun, the top economist for the Realtors. New home sales, though, were down in June. Economic growth coming in at 2.4% in the spring second quarter of this year. Durable goods orders up 4.7%, led by Boeing contracts. Jobless claims out today have dropped to the lowest level seen since February. All this a day after the Federal Reserve decided to bump up short-term interest rates by another quarter percentage point, setting the prime lending rate charged by major banks impacting your consumer loans as well as business loans, moving that to prime rate to 8.5%. Well, the hot labor summer continues with Hollywood movie and TV production shut down by the writers and actors strike. The first studios have seen this situation like this since 1960. Hotel workers in the L.A. area continue their rolling picket lines, and this week we saw Kaiser Permanente hospital workers also set up picket lines at more than 40 of its facilities across California. I'll talk about the hot labor summer tonight with prominent Southern California-based economist Kevin KLOWDEN, the chief global strategist at the Milken Institute in Santa Monica. Also later this hour, we'll get an update on what's happening at the magnificent Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute in Simi Valley. The powerful exhibition Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away, is in its final weeks now. The exhibit includes more than 700 original artifacts from the Nazi death camp. Melissa Giller, the chief marketing officer, will be joining us live later this hour from the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute. But first, on the markets, the economy, the end of the Dow's big run-up today, and the whole works. Joining us live now, GABRIEL Wisdom, Managing Director of American Money Management and author of Wisdom on Value Investing. GABRIEL, thank you very much for taking the call here. It would have been the longest streak since 1897. It was just a couple years after the Dow was founded, I understand, but that did not happen, but was certainly an impressive run-up and a bit of a pullback today. Give us your assessment of things here at the moment.
You know, Frank, it's interesting how we all like to assign a reason why markets sell off or why they go up, and sometimes they just get a little tired. This, as you mentioned, would have been the longest streak in well over 100 years in terms of day-after-day gains in the financial markets, and the market got tired. But the cause du jour, the reason we're all assigning this sell-off today, which wasn't too steep, is what you mentioned, the policy tweak by the Bank of Japan. The Bank of Japan has been the lone holdout in keeping very, very low interest rates on their 10-year Japanese Treasury bonds. They've yielded, less than 0.5% for years. And now they're talking about lifting this market manipulation. They call it a yield curve control, In 2016, they lightened up on the yield curve control a little bit, and rates went up, somewhat in Japan. Now the fear is that if they take the lid off completely, then rates in Japan will rise enough to compete with U.S. Treasuries, which, of course, we need to finance the debt. So that was the reason assigned for the sell-off. But I think the market was just due for one.
Very interesting. Japan getting new attention. Remember, Japan was the big thing back in the late 80s, and businesses here were encouraged to do what Japanese businesses were doing, and then that all fell apart ultimately.
Absolutely. That can happen, and then Japan went into the longest deflationary spiral that happened that has occurred in my lifetime and yours. And that's why they've had, for the most part, zero interest rates for well over 20 years in Japan, but looks like that's going to end.
Very interesting. And, of course, the Magnificent Seven, very much a topic of conversation following the AI bump we saw with NVIDIA, certainly in the lead on all that. What about the Magnificent Seven here in the recent run-up?
Well, we're talking about Microsoft, Google or Alphabet, Apple, Amazon, Meta, NVIDIA, did I leave anybody out? Salesforce.com. They've accounted for about 50% of the year-to-date gains in the broad stock market, in the S&P 500. Now, that kind of concentration, where you get 7 stocks that grow so much that they influence the remaining stocks of the S&P 500 companies. That hasn't happened in 60 years, according to research I saw from J.P. Morgan. And by the way, all of the S&P 500 year-to-date returns can be completely explained by just 31 stocks, which means the broad market is actually quite cheap. A lot of good companies are selling well below their highs of 2020, for example.
That's very interesting. And, of course, we're coming off the big Fed meeting this week, the Fed decision to bump rates higher with the possibility of additional hikes. Inflation still running hotter than where the Fed wants it. What's your assessment of what happened this week with the Fed and the impact of this latest rate hike?
Well, today, the European Central Bank decided to hike their interest rate for the 9th time in a year. But they're still well below where we are after raising the central bank rate, the prime rate, or the overnight Fed funds rate, actually. Yeah, for 13 times, I think it is now. But the Fed chairman is saying higher for longer. If you interpret the Fed speak, it's hard to ascertain what this fiscal inflation of the past has really done to inflation, but we're seeing easing supply disruptions. We're seeing lower energy costs. We're seeing falling tradable goods prices, some negative real wage growth despite the tight labor. And so I would say inflation is probably going to fall faster and harder than many anticipate. Some say it'll be a soft landing, some a hard landing. I'm in the no landing camp.
All right, or bumpy landing, I think you said last time, possibly. I know you're a pilot, too, so you know what that means.
That's right. Any landing you can walk away from is a good landing.
Now, let me ask you this. As far as the reaction we've seen, oil, by the way, that's what I wanted to mention here. Inflation certainly is still very much evident at Southern California gas pumps, with prices moving higher. The self-serve regular price at $5 a gallon on average again, as the price of oil continues to flirt with $80 a barrel. The oil stocks have been moving up lately. This could fuel another round of inflation, certainly, that really impacts consumers. And when we've seen gas prices go up, we see consumer confidence go down. And it looks like that could happen again this time around. What do you see ahead for the price of oil and the oil names here?
That's right. This is probably the busiest week, certainly of the summer, maybe of the year, for earnings. 178 companies have reported earnings so far. That's 36% of the market. And overall, almost 80%, 79% of these companies are beating earnings estimates. And those beats are by a pretty good margin, which tells you business is quite brisk. One of the companies that beat analyst expectations. It came out today. Chevron, they had a $6 billion second quarter profit, which was above analysts' outlook. They've agreed to acquire PDC Energy for $7.6 billion in cash and acquired debt. That's going to increase their output substantially. The oil and gas companies are not slowing down. In fact, the demand for traditional kinds of fuel I don't think it's ever been greater.
All right. Would you be placing any bets here now among the oil names? Any money being put in there or taken off the table?
Well, I know Warren Buffett continues to buy Occidental Petroleum. I saw that in the latest reports. And he's acquiring, and he's underwater in the whole position from what I can see, but he keeps buying, which is what he does, what's made him one of the world's great investors. He doesn't pay a whole lot of attention to the quoted price. He's looking at what he estimates as the intrinsic value or underlying value. So, yeah, I think on a worst to first basis, being the energy is among one of the worst performing sectors this year. Was one of the best. It was the best performing sector last year. I think you have to own it in a diversified portfolio.
All right. He likes Apple, too, famously. So what about Apple here?
I love Apple. They're involved in the entertainment business and getting more involved in entertainment. And you mentioned this strike mania, the Hollywood strike, and so on. Barbie, the movie, and Oppenheimer, or Barbenheimer, as I saw it referred to, is really having an economic impact. Bank of America put out a research report today that said that they've seen a big increase in spending on entertainment as well as at clothing stores, partially driven by the release of these movies. Barbenheimer. Now, Fed chairman yesterday said at the margin, stronger growth like this could lead over time to higher inflation. It would require an appropriate response for monetary policy. He's watching this all carefully, but it appears to me that the Fed has pretty much given up on a 2% inflation target. They're going to be satisfied with a higher level of inflation. Otherwise, the whole system will teeter, and then they've got to loosen again. They don't want to do that. I think they want a nice, stable monetary policy.
All right, and then, of course, the banks back in focus this week with that big PacWest Bank of California deal. What about the regional banks here and the rise of PacWest here?
Well, now the government is talking about tighter restrictions on banks, bigger capital requirements. Bank of California is merging with PacWest Bancorp. It's an all-stock deal, and this is going to make the combined entity a member of basically a Federal Reserve Bank. So it's a positive sign that bank mergers look to be back on the table after this regional banking crisis that affected pretty much everybody, certainly borrowers in small and mid-sized businesses and commercial real estate.
Are these going to be shotgun marriages, or are banks going to do this on their own, you think?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I saw Ed Yardeni was writing about a Category 5 hurricane in commercial real estate, which sounds horrific, but Barry Sternlicht was interviewed on Bloomberg Wealth with David Rubenstein, and Yardeni was writing about it. And this fellow, Sternlicht, amassed his fortune in real estate by purchasing distressed properties during the financial crisis. And he says that the same opportunity is coming for commercial real estate, and he's getting ready for it. Now, at the same time, his own firm, Starwood, has defaulted on a $212 million mortgage on their Tower Place in Atlanta. Blackstone has done the same. Brookfield has defaulted on a big building. So, there are cracks in the foundation.
Certainly, I haven't heard the hurricane warning, but one headline in Forbes said, "Don't look up. Is there a commercial real estate comet heading our way. So some pretty ominous reports about what's happening in commercial real estate as the office world, especially the office towers, are very much vulnerable right now.
That's right, and then combine this with the strike, the summer of labor strikes. These are just more shockwaves, I think, from the pandemic economy after it reopened and many quit their jobs, causing the labor shortage. Those buildings, a lot of these commercial buildings, only partially full because labor has demanded to work from home or not work. And labor unions have certainly grown more powerful. We almost had a fallout between the Teamsters and UPS. That seems to be okay. The United Auto Workers has 3 separate contracts with General Motors, and they're talking about walking away. United Airlines made a deal with their pilots, which was quite a big bump in pay. Now, American Airlines raised its offer for new pilot contracts because they need to have pilots. So this is a spiral, a wage price spiral. It's an updraft, and it's going to cost us all more money, certainly.
All right, and before we let you off the hook here, Gabriel, was there any specific places where you are putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Well, Frank, if you consider the performance of the broad market, there's 11 major sectors, and of those major sectors, a number of them that have done so badly are really perking up now. Energy is starting to lift, for example. Utilities are getting a little stronger. Health care is looking up. Consumer staples, and everybody loves the Magnificent Seven. But one company that has my attention, I'm looking at it again, they reported earnings today that surprised everybody, and that would be Intel. This is all part of the onshoring, mandate by the administration in Washington. Chips Ahoy, their second quarter results were way better than expected. The stock is down by 50% or more from its highs 2 years ago, and they're focusing on artificial intelligence, the cloud, and enterprise. I think they've got a shot.
All right, terrific, Gabriel. Thank you very much for that thorough update on what's happening with the markets and the economy tonight. Gabriel Wisdom, Managing Director of American Money Management and author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Gabriel, have a wonderful evening, and thanks again for joining us live here tonight.
Thank you, Frank.
Folks, it's jarring to have a car accident out there and hard to think clearly when you're hurt. So my friend, attorney Clark Fielding of Fielding Law, has created something to help you. It's a guide called Be Prepared Before a Motor Vehicle Accident. That guide is one page, fits right there in the glove compartment, and gives you everything you need in case you are hurt in an accident. Go to ClarkTheSharkLaw.com and download your free one-page guide and keep it right there in your glove box, and put Clark Fielding's number in your phone, too, under the word accident. So all you have to do is dial the number when you need them. Tell your family and friends to do the same. So if you're hurt in an accident, call the one we all trust, attorney Clark Fielding. The number to call is 833-88-SHARK. That's 833-88-SHARK, 833-88-SHARK, and download the Be Prepared Before a Motor Vehicle Accident Guide. You can get it at ClarkTheSharkLaw.com. That's ClarkTheSharkLaw.com. Again, ClarkTheSharkLaw.com. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KABC. Good evening. 790 KBC welcomes Boney James coming to the Saban Theater October 13th. Tickets on sale now at AXS.com. Right now, caller 9 wins at 1-888-790-5222. You can get a pair of tickets to the show. Again, caller 9, call now, 1-888-790-5222. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. We see the Dow slipping at the close today, down 237 points to 35,283 after getting off to a positive start today, and it looked as if the Dow was going to make it 14 winning sessions in a row, but the winning streak ended at 13, snapping its longest winning streak since January of 1987, the epic year. And we did not make it to 14, which would have been the longest winning streak since 1897. The S&P 500 down 29 at the bell today at 4,537, and the NASDAQ down 77 points at 14,050. Taking a look at the price of oil, it's been dancing around $80 a barrel lately, down to 42 cents here at the moment. It's $79.67 a barrel. The damage has been done at Southern California gas pumps. The average price for regular gas in Los Angeles now back above $5 a gallon as of this week. $5.03 the average price for regular, $5.36 now the average price for premium, and looks like $5.30 is your average price for diesel. Meta shares up today. Alphabet, Google shares also moving higher. Price of gold hovering at $1945.70 an ounce. In the cryptos, we see Bitcoin up $11 at $29,226. Ethereum up about $1 now at $1,861, and Doge at 8 cents. Goldman Sachs shares down about 1%. Home Depot up slightly. The second and third biggest contributors to the recent winning streak. Apple and Microsoft, the only two members of the Magnificent Seven, included in the Dow, surprisingly had little influence on the winning streak, which ended today for the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Looks like United Health shares was a big contributor to the recent gains for the Dow. In fact, United Health shares on track for the biggest gain in more than 2 years after that healthcare giant beat earnings expectations. Mottek on Money continues here on 790 KABC. The hot labor summer continues with the writers and the actors on the picket lines in Hollywood. We're also seeing more strike action by the hotel workers and also Kaiser Permanente healthcare workers, also job actions this week. Joining us now is economist Kevin KLOWDEN, Chief Global Strategist at the Milken Institute in Santa Monica, who's been widely quoted, by the way, worldwide these days in the major entertainment papers as well as global press on what's happening here in Hollywood, and of course a frequent contributor, and we greatly appreciate it here on Mottek on Money on 790 KABC. Kevin KLOWDEN, great to connect with you here on this big story here. Give us your reaction to what's going on, especially here in Hollywood at the moment.
Well, we're seeing something that we were afraid was going to happen, which is that now that the actors have joined the strike and that the actors do not appear closer to a resolution, that there are larger fundamental issues in terms of not just wages, but working conditions and how people are employed and how many hours they work and what they do, and let alone residuals, which of course gets lots of attention, and AI. But all of that's added up, and none of these issues are simple, and nobody wanted to strike right now because the timing in terms of Hollywood and revenues and recovery from the pandemic is not good, but nobody can see an easy way out.
Is there any light at the end of this tunnel? Obviously, it can't go on indefinitely. How do you see this getting resolved finally?
Well, you can hope that the pathway that the Directors Guild came into, where the Directors Guild did a lot of in-depth analysis and said, all right, this is the compromise that we're willing to take and to do, and they were able to avoid a strike. But the Directors Guild never goes on strike, and so they were already coming into it and saying, we will take whatever we need to. The problem you've got now, and ironically also at the same time maybe it is the light, is that it's the actors and the writers, and you can't really go forward until you resolve both of them. And that might create enough of a critical mass to have the producers at least come up with a working compromise on issues rather than trying to outlast everybody, which they might have been able to do simply with the writers. And that might create a functional short-term solution. And that's really what we need right now, because streaming has shown that the industry is changing so quickly that any long-term agreement like what we had a few years ago is going to be outdated quickly. So they need to find something so that they can get back to work before it's too late.
When all this Hollywood labor unrest was unfolding, I remember Snoop Dogg at the Milken Institute Global Conference calling for more compensation for streamers and so forth. He recently had to delay his concert at the Hollywood Bowl, classical music concert no less. But certainly the whole entertainment world at a standstill here at the moment with all of the celebrities on the picket lines, and obviously it's affecting everyone at this point. What about the ultimate economic impact of all of this, with events being canceled and obviously production at a standstill? It's having a broader impact on the whole economy here.
It absolutely is. And where really you see it and you feel it first and foremost isn't going to the movie theater yet. It isn't watching TV yet, but it will be starting in the fall and winter. Right now, it's the restaurants that get hit, it's the hotels that get hit, it's the construction people that get hit, it's the rental people that get hit, it's the skilled craftspeople that get hit. All of them are being pulled along for this, and all of them are seeing their livelihoods under stress and under pressure. And that's where we see it now. But the longer this goes on, not only to their own economic livelihoods come under threat, and potentially not even causing to leave the state or anything, but simply to leave the industry, which is something we actually saw in
Stacking Benjamins with Joe and his good friend OG not only has great financial insight, it's laid back with humor too.
Mr. Len Penzo's here. Now when I buy something, I'm like, can actually spend any time with this thing. Len, I would imagine you've got to think about that too when you're buying stuff.
You know, before I was retired, if I wanted something, I bought it. I don't care what it was. The Kings were in the Stanley Cup Finals, and me and the Honeybee, I mean, we didn't even think about it. $3,600 on 2 tickets. Now that I'm retired, those days are gone.
The Stacking Benjamin Show, available on YouTube or wherever you listen.
the last big strike in 2008. But the other is that we're going to start seeing a shortage of content, and that's where the movie theaters, who really don't have other good options, start getting hit. You know, Netflix has made it public that they are going to acquire, bring in more of their content from Korea, from France, from elsewhere to fill the void, and they can sit this out longer. But at the same time, Netflix could lose a number of viewers, ones they've just been gaining back, because the appeal of these shows has been shown to not be nearly as broad. And if they can't get their signature shows back, the concern is they will bleed out. And that long-term impact, that pressure on everybody can and will be felt. And not everybody is Amazon and Apple, who are sitting on massive piles of cash and revenue streams that have nothing to do with the industry.
And all this is happening just at a time when people are reminded of the demand for Hollywood product, with Barbie and Oppenheimer doing so well at the box office last weekend. What about the AI part of this, and how do you expect this part to be resolved?
Well, the AI it's a favorite toy problem. It potentially could be very, very damaging. It could be potentially very effective. We've been seeing this idea of images and virtual people replacing actual people, going back to the Star Wars prequels, let alone Lord of the Rings. That's been around for a while. So what happens in terms of this image and ownership? What happens to AI actually replacing or supplementing or otherwise affecting writers? It is a threat. Right now, it doesn't make much economic sense, but people are thinking long term, and the question is, can you come up with a compromise now while recognizing that these are long-term shifts in realities? And AI is a threat, but it's an even bigger threat to not have any product right now at all.
And certainly the cost of living and inflation driving all of this as well, and not only with the actors and the writers, but also, as we're seeing with the hotel workers out there with the boisterous demonstrations, including at the Beverly Hilton and a lot of the big places here now. What about the hotel strike situation?
Well, the hotel workers are getting nailed in multiple different ways. The first is the cost of living for hotel workers to live near where they work has become prohibitive. So they're being stuck in longer and longer commutes. They're being stuck in more difficult situations just to simply get to work. So their cost of paying for the commute, the fact is, LA, the mass transit options don't necessarily line up to where the jobs are and where the people live. It takes, if you work with line mass transit, it could take you 2 hours each way, and that's 2 hours that you're not working or at home, and that becomes an issue. The other is that there is a huge amount of pressure on the hotel workers because they went through really tough times during the pandemic. Either they were furloughed, and they had to deal with that, or when they came back, a number of hotels have had trouble attracting and retaining workers, especially so under tougher working conditions. So that means that the load on the remaining hotel workers is higher, and they're burning out. And facing all of those issues, they're raising their voices because it's not a sustainable path for them.
That is a very important point. Economist Kevin KLOWDEN, Chief Global Strategist at the Milken Institute in Santa Monica, who gave the keynote presentation at the Summer 2023 Financial Symposium organized by the Treasurer Tax Collector in San Diego County, Dan McAllister. Thank you very much, Kevin KLOWDEN, for joining us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC.
My pleasure. Thank you, Frank.
Don't give in to that constant joint pain. Take control. Take back your quality of life today with the help from QC Kinetics. Frank Mottek here. QC Kinetics is helping people every day right here and all across the country with their amazing non-surgical treatments that repair and restore your damaged joint tissue. They use the latest advances in regenerative medicine, taking your own body's healing agents and concentrating them right in the area where you have that agonizing pain. This incredible non-invasive approach helps you take back control of your body relieving the pain in your knees, hips, shoulders, or back. No invasive surgery, no harmful drugs or steroids, and no downtime. Summertime needs to be about having fun out there, making memories, golfing, hiking, enjoying the great outdoors. Take control now and start living pain-free again. Call QC Kinetics. Locations in Glendale, the city of Orange, Mission Viejo, and now also in Costa Mesa. Give them a call now at 213-997-PAIN. 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 Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Always something special happening at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in Simi Valley. Earlier this month, the life-size statue of astronaut Sally Ride was dedicated on the 4th of July. There's a stretch of the Berlin Wall there, too. Special events and special appearances and special exhibits as well. The magnificent Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute in Simi Valley now has the powerful exhibition Auschwitz, Not Long Ago, Not Far Away, in its final weeks. The exhibit includes more than 700 original artifacts from the Nazi death camp. Joining us live now is Melissa Giller, the Chief Marketing Officer at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute. Melissa Giller, thank you very much for taking the call here. Indeed, tell us more about what people can expect when they go to the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library these days.
Yes, so as you said, Auschwitz, Not Long Ago, Not Far Away, is here in its final weeks. There are over 700 authentic artifacts, direct witnesses to the horrors of Auschwitz and the Holocaust, over 400 photographs, and dozens of survivor testimonies. It is just such an important way to come and learn about this time in our history so we ensure it doesn't happen again.
How long, much longer will this exhibit be there?
Yes, so it closes on August 13th, so there isn't that much more time to come, and we do encourage people to purchase their tickets in advance because we do have a limited number of tickets we sell each day. But you're seeing things like an actual barrack in the Auschwitz-Monowitz camp, actual fence posts that kept the victims inside at Auschwitz, the first desk of the commandant of Auschwitz, and just, hundreds of personal items like glasses and suitcases and clothing. In fact, we have an actual World War II era German train car, which were the train cars used to transport the Jews to the camps.
President Reagan, of course, did everything possible to honor the memory of those who perished in the Holocaust and, of course, met with many of the survivors back in those days and, of course, celebrated the D-Day invasion, famously the 40th anniversary in 1984. Share with us how President Reagan wanted to be remembered as far as the Holocaust is concerned and making sure that people remember what happened.
Yeah, so he actually was at the cornerstone laying in 1988 of the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., but it dates back all the way back to the 40s when Ronald Reagan was an actor, and he tried to join the Army during the war, and he couldn't because his eyesight wasn't good enough, or he couldn't go to war, I should say, and they sent him to the 1st Motion Picture Unit to make training videos for those who were fighting. And after the liberation of the camps, his unit was the first unit to see the actual film footage coming from the liberation of the camps. And when he saw the horror that these people lived in, when he saw the skeletal bodies, both alive and dead, those images were forever ingrained in his heart, in his mind, in his soul. And he said he would never forget it and he would never stop talking about it. So that this type of horrific thing in our world would never happen again. That is why he was at the cornerstone laying. He spoke about never forgetting multiple times throughout his presidency. And, that's just, one of the many reasons we have this exhibition here at the Reagan Library, because it is so important to learn and educate ourselves so that history doesn't repeat itself. There's a quote in the exhibition from a survivor that says, to all the deniers and doubters in the world, look at the tattoo on my arm, and tell me it's not real. And so it's just so important to take the time. It's not an easy exhibition to walk through. We see a lot of people in tears, but you have to face this reality so that we can, educate ourselves, educate our families, educate the youth about what happens when you turn a blind eye to hate.
Certainly, and you mentioned people can get the tickets in advance. So what's the best way to do that and get more information about the exhibit?
Yeah, thank you for that. So simply ReaganLibrary.com will take you there. If you want to be a little bit more specific, you can go to ReaganLibrary.com/Auschwitz. But going to ReaganLibrary.com takes you to our homepage. There's a banner right at the top to learn more information, to purchase tickets. Open 10 to 5, 7 days a week. The weekends do sell out, so tickets Monday through Thursday are easier to get. And it is a 2.5-hour experience. There's a mandatory audio tour so that you can hear the survivor testimony. But we really do recommend, if you can find a way out here in the next 2 weeks, it's something you really should do.
Certainly, I would encourage everyone to see it. I will myself try to get there as well, and hope to see you there. And there's always something happening there at your magnificent library. I know a friend of mine recently was involved in the dedication of the statue of astronaut Sally Ride there at the Reagan Library on the 4th of July. That must have been a wonderful occasion there.
Yeah, that was really fun. Sally Ride was the first female American astronaut in space, and her first flight was in 1983 while Ronald Reagan was president. She was also a California native. So we thought, why not sort of permanently install a monument here to her to celebrate her life, to celebrate space exploration and all the things that space exploration can lead to our future.
Certainly, and President Reagan, of course, was president during the Space Shuttle era, and dealt with the Challenger tragedy in 1986, and of course the return to space flight as well. I happen to have been at the Kennedy Space Center the day that happened, and I was also at the Kennedy Space Center in 1988 when the Space Shuttle Discovery resumed the space program. It was beautiful what President Reagan said on the one-year anniversary of Challenger. There was a lot of concern about how children were going to be affected by what they saw on television in their classrooms when they watched as the teacher, Kristen McAuliffe, go into space, and we had the Challenger tragedy, and I worried about the permanent damage that kids might have experienced having seen that, but he said, no, that was not the case a year later, because the number of applications for the young astronaut program had actually increased over that year, and of course the rest is history.
He was very proud of that and wanted to make sure that we, those who did lose their lives weren't lost in vain, that we continued space exploration. It continued science, continued all of those different types of things. So yes, it was something he was really proud of to help advance while he was president.
Certainly, and also honoring Sally Ride there now. And you have a stretch of the Berlin Wall there, of course, which did not fall during his presidency, but he called for the wall to come down during his presidency, calling for the Soviet leader Gorbachev to tear down the wall in that famous speech at the Brandenburg Gate.
Right.
Quite
so
remarkable.
1987. Yep, exactly. 1987. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. It came down in November of 1989, so about 10 or 11 months after Ronald Reagan left office. And we are very honored to have a real piece of it here on outside of our property that people can come. You can walk right up to it. You can touch it. We like to say you can touch a piece of history. And it sits on the same portion of our campus where President and Mrs. Reagan are buried. So there's a lot of different things you can see and do while you're here, not just tour inside the galleries.
That's wonderful. Well, Melissa, thank you very much. I look forward to staying in touch with you, and please keep us informed as to all of the exhibits and wonderful speakers and events you have there at the Reagan Presidential Foundation Institute and Library. Thank you very much for that comprehensive update on what's happening in your beautiful facility. And again, the Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away, now in its final weeks, and encourage everyone to see that important exhibit. Thank you very much for joining us here this evening.
Thanks for having me.
This is Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. I'll be back again tomorrow evening in the 5 o'clock hour. We'll recap what happened in the markets and the economy. We're also scheduled to speak to Los Angeles business and civic leader Rick Caruso tomorrow evening. This is Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.